Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Community Spotlight. I am delighted to have with me this evening members of the International Hyperhidrosis Society. I have an entire family tonight. It's such a treat. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Mom Dawn.
Hi, I'm Dawn, and I have both Palmer and plantar hyperhidrosis.
Thanks for being here, Dawn.
Yeah.
Raili, let's hear from you and your family.
Hi, my name is Raili, and I actually have all three forms of hyperhidrosis. So, yeah, and this is my youngest, Scarlett. She has both hand and feet, and she's young, so young that we're not 100% sure if she's going to have all three as well. This is Harley, and she's in the same boat again, hands and feet since birth with both babies, and then we're just waiting for puberty to see if they suffer from all three forms.
And I'm Brandon, and I have, I guess I have all three.
Well, thank you for being here with your family. I'm really looking forward to talking with you all. Stephanie, how about you introduce yourself and your family?
Hi, I'm Stephanie, and this is Daniel.
Hello.
I do not suffer from hyperhidrosis. However, Daniel does.
Just my armpits and my feet. So
And Zeke. And what about Zeke?
And then our son's got it in his feet, but that's about it so far.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to sit down with me for Peter's Community Spotlight. We are very thrilled to be highlighting hyperhidrosis this evening. So as we get started, Dawn, I'll look to you. Can you sort of share your story and your journey with hyperhidrosis?
I can. My entire life, I had sweaty hands and sweaty feet. Didn't know what it was. My parents are in the medical field. My father is a physician, and my sister as well had, just sweaty hands, sweaty feet. And we didn't know what it was. We were an anomaly in school. A couple of years ago, I was listening to a podcast and I heard something about hyperhidrosis and people who had sweaty hands and sweaty feet. And I thought, wait, what? And I was so excited to hear that there was actually a word for something that we had. In fact, I immediately called my sister and said, there's actually a word for it. And I also at that point in time reached out to the founder, right, of Hyperhidrosis, the International Society. And so I was so excited to connect and to be able to find out what this was, because my daughter Raili, immediately at birth, her hands and her feet, and later on ancillary as well, right, in her system. Stephanie did not have any symptoms of it, but I have a brother who doesn't have any, but I've got a niece who has it severely. I have a nephew who has it severely. I have another niece who has it severely. So it's random within our family.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting enough, both of my daughters partnered up with men who have it, and experience, one or three. So far, nobody has cranial. But we definitely suffer from what, palmar and plantar. So definitely our hands and feet are big, areas of concern that we have all the time. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did I hear that right? It was just a handful of years ago that you were finally able to put a name to this?
It was in my 50s. And had it. I grew up with a sponge underneath my hand, writing because I would just soak through the paper. In my shoes, you go through shoes very quickly, couldn't wear sandals, terrified in church when you had to hold hands, right? You didn't want to hold hands. Learning to partner up with people who could appreciate the fact that, you truly, it's not a minor condition of your hands are a little clammy. They're dripping. They're dripping now. They drip. And I was in Mexico with some friends not too long ago, and somebody said, "What's wrong with your feet?" Because they're pulling out, and I said, oh, I have, plantar fascia, hyperhidrosis. I
Right.
actually know what I have. So I was really, it gave me some peace, because until then it was something that just my sister and I had, and then somehow we passed it on, just to our children randomly. And then again, my brother to several of his kids, 2 of his 4. So it was just an interesting thing to think we were kind of alone, and to find out that there's a large percentage of the world's population who shares our symptoms, right? Yeah. And then I can also help my kids to understand, hey, this has a name.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be like completely, what's the right word? Like kind of world opening. Raili, I saw you nodding your head a lot when your mom was talking about, the worries that come along with all of this and having dripping wet hands. And so what was it like for you, like as a child, but then also getting older and then having a name for it and being able to identify it? What was that like?
Yeah.
Sorry, mute. So growing up, like my mom was saying, shoes were always a major issue. No sandals, because you squeaked when you walked, because your feet were just dripping. And so it always sounded like you were fresh out of a pool, and it was embarrassing. Couldn't ever take my shoes off at other people's houses, because the sweaty feet leads to stinky shoes. So never ever was willing to go take my shoes off at friends' houses, whatnot. Homes like what my mom had, where you had to take your shoes off, I would just tend to avoid those people. Didn't hold hands a whole lot, still don't. Like, my husband has it, and so he loves me and just cares. But I have literally had jobs where my boss has shaken my hand and then wiped it off on their clothes and gone, ew, what's wrong with you? So it led to the point where I just started telling people I was a germaphobe and refused to shake hands, which has led to me being in trouble at work over the years. I've had several write-ups because of it over the years. Yeah. So having a name for it is great. People still don't understand. And having it also under the arms is really hard, because I wear a lot of black, because black doesn't show through. I've learned to tailor my wardrobe to what I'm comfortable in, because otherwise I'm just constantly dripping wet, constantly all year round, 24/7. It doesn't matter how cold, how hot, anything. It's just dealing with that level of embarrassment. So I've just learned to tailor my wardrobe around what I can and can't wear. So, and I know Brandon does the same thing with his wardrobe. So even as adults, we tend to wear a ton of black clothing because it's the only thing that doesn't show sweat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, Brandon, what's your experience been like?
It was funny. I just always thought it was just something I dealt with. Having sweaty feet, having sweaty hands. I just figured, okay, I'm a sweaty boy. That's what I am. I remember getting teased a little bit in high school because it was, it must be warm out. You could see Brandon's sweat stains down to his belt. It looked like I was wading through water. But even with that, it was always just, that's not a thing. And then to hear Dawn talk about it, to hear Raili talk about it, it was, wait, maybe this isn't just a thing that I struggle with. It's actually something that exists out there in the world.
There's that little bit of comfort knowing that there are others out there who are experiencing the same thing you are. But at the same time, I sort of heard in your voice, Raili, that being able to have a name for it was great and all, but I'm sensing there's a big but there. It didn't solve the problem. It doesn't provide a treatment or, yeah.
Unfortunately, people don't really ever leave high school. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing as humanity that that's a thing that we have to say, and that we all nod and say, yeah, we know people never leave high school. That's pretty unfair. Also, what I'm hearing is like just how many changes you've had to make to your daily life to accommodate this disease. And I mean, it's just got to be really hard to constantly be thinking that and have it in the foreground of your life every day.
It is. You've learned to definitely tailor things. Like my mom said, you write with a napkin under your hand. You don't hold papers for too long. You don't hand somebody something that you've been holding on to. You learn to work around these things. Like I said, I had to claim that I was a germaphobe for years in my offices just to have an excuse as to why I refused to interact with people on these levels.
And I mean, this is for really all of you being parents of children who have this. What's it like? What's it like watching your kids have this? I think, yeah. What, Raili, we'll start with you. Yeah.
More than anything, we lose a ton of socks because they don't like wearing socks.
Yeah.
So we don't like sweaty feet, and so we take off our socks. So luckily not too bad, but we do have a 13-year-old that suffers from it pretty severely. So she's actually learned to carry handkerchiefs on her at all times and wipe her hands before shaking hands with other people because the kids make comments about it to the point it made her severely self-conscious. And so she's had to make those same changes, and again, can't take her shoes off at other people's houses because she's embarrassed by it. And so she's had to make some life alterations as well. And so it's affecting her on top of everything else going on as a teenager.
I can't think of a worse time to have to go through something like that. I mean, 8th grade and middle school is already terrifying enough, and then to pile on something like this on top of it. Oh, whew, my goodness. Stephanie, I'll turn to you now. I want to hear sort of your experiences as a sister to, your sister has hyperhidrosis. You do not, but your son does and your husband does. So what is your experience like?
So, honestly, as far as the hyperhidrosis goes, my mom's hands are a huge part of my childhood memory. My mom's hands they sweat so bad they ruin keyboards. I mean, it's pretty impressive. And I don't suffer from it. So it's interesting to see. But when I met Daniel, his armpits he goes through shirts like I've never seen. I mean, I'll own shirt for 10 years and he owns a shirt for a few months.
Right.
And he sweats through them all the way down.
It's happening with my feet.
We can't really hear you, Dan. Wait, we can't hear you. What'd you say?
I said one of my biggest issues is getting athlete's foot, just because my feet are sweaty. You just get it all the time. So I mitigate it by just putting powder in my socks every day. Every single day, I put powder in my socks every day. It's just a thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight like the secondary issues that you have. I mean, apart from the burden of the stigma and the burden of the disease itself, but something like athlete's foot and having to cope with that. What are some other things that hyperhidrosis has led to you having to cope with?
Your feet crack because they're constantly wet, and they don't dry out appropriately. They don't callus correctly, so they're constantly creating these very large bleeding cracks. I don't know why, but that's a big deal with them as well.
That sounds quite painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, just going through.
I get them in my hands too.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I mean, Dan'll sweat through a sweatshirt in the winter.
Wow.
It's pretty impressive to watch him sweat through a sweatshirt.
Yeah, I can't.
And then our 2-year-old has the world's stinkiest feet.
Remember?
Yeah. And when you're 2, it's kind of funny, but I imagine that, the older you get, the more self-conscious you become. And then it is leading to those things we've already talked about, like those life alterations and those concerns and that lack of confidence as you grow.
Yeah, Dan's, has your armpits ever affected your confidence?
No, not really. Not my armpits. My only issue was like I used because we just had a kid, but before the kid, I used to work out all the time and I'd go running. But one of the things was is I would come home literally sopping wet from just running.
Wow.
But I wouldn't feel like I just like was, you know, I wouldn't feel bad or anything like that. I just
Excessive.
I mean, it wasn't just in the armpits. Whenever I used to go exercise, other people that have that same issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So turning to treatment, like what kind of options are there for you as adults? I know that the pediatric space is super limited, but what are the options?
So
I can
Dan
answer that.
seems
Go
to
ahead.
be really, oh, Mom, you can go.
No, go ahead, babe. Go ahead.
Well, Dan seems to be stress induced. So he doesn't even have
Interesting.
to be moving. And if you stress him out, he's got a 10-inch deep armpit stain just from the stress. So would you say that like your sweat is just stress induced sometimes?
Sometimes I mean, yeah, but I usually always sweat. I don't know.
I don't know how you fix that. If you guys have any ideas.
And I can answer. So as part of getting tied into hyperhidrosis and Lisa Peretti and the community, we were able to experience some of the treatments that are possible, and through an initiative that we rolled out through the company I work for, I was able to even understand more treatment options. So that's really cool. You can get up to 100 shots of Botox in a single hand.
Wow.
And up to 79 shots of Botox in a foot. My understanding is that treatment can last about 4 months. There's also, we did get an ionic machine for one of the girl's cousins, and he sat with his hands. So they basically put him in water and electrocutes the water. And he would do that for his hands and feet for about 17 days. He said that did give him some relief. And then he kind of goes into maintenance where he does it a couple times a week. So there are some treatments. None of them are simple and none of them are kind. They're definitely, there's some drastic, I think, measures that people try to take in order to alleviate. I know there's some creams, I believe, that we can now get, or underarm, deodorants that we can use. I think they're starting to become more effective. I know that the stuff that you put on your hands burns my hands and causes it to rash and blister.
Oh.
So from my perspective, I've chosen to do nothing, but because I have the experience, I understand what it is to get through it, and my girls have made it through it. We may find something for the littles as they get older, right? If it becomes more and more unmanageable. And then for Raina, who is 13, if it's that impactful, then maybe we can look at some options for her as well. But
and I want to add that with the Botox, I've worked in the medical spa industry, and I have a friend that's got hyperhidrosis that spends thousands of dollars quarterly to make sure that her hands don't sweat so that she can do phlebotomy.
Wow.
And so I've actually seen the Botox put into the armpits, put into the hands, put into the feet. Does it work? Absolutely. Is it affordable? No. Is it covered by medical? No. And so, I have a friend, I think she spends about $12,000 a year
Wow.
making sure she doesn't sweat at work.
Wow. So something that I'm really hearing is that treatment doesn't really sound like that great of an option. There just aren't that many things available. What is available just is uncomfortable, not practical. And then the Botox, sure, great. If it's effective, awesome. If it were covered by medical insurance, then that would be a super viable treatment, right? So being involved with the International Hyperhidrosis Society, I know they are advocates for research. I know that Lisa Peretti is really involved and interested in research. So from your perspectives, what does research look like and mean to each of you? Dawn, maybe we'll start with you.
So I think research is key. It's critical. With the 18 to 39-year-olds, it goes up to I think 10%, right? I think getting the word out and understanding it's more prevalent than peanut allergies and eczema, and yet everybody knows what a peanut allergy and eczema is, right? But they don't know what hyperhidrosis is. I think getting away from the stigma that, oh, that person's sweating because they're lying, or that person's sweating because they're nervous. Well, they may just be sweating,
Right.
right?
They may have hyperhidrosis.
It may just be that they have hyperhidrosis. I think for me, and am I allowed to say my company name?
Yes, in fact, I'm
Okay.
hoping that we can talk about that. Lisa gave
Okay.
me a little bit of a teaser about the incredible work that you and Lisa did together at your
Okay.
company. So why don't you tell us that story?
Yes. So in listening to the blog and then reaching out to Lisa and the International Hyperhidrosis Society, I went to AT&T, which is where I work. And we were able to put together an entire program and kind of an infomercial that allowed everybody in the company to be able to have access not only to understanding about what hyperhidrosis is, but also to have treatment. So AT&T is one of the few companies in the country now that does provide treatment options for hyperhidrosis,
Wow.
which I think is a wonderful win. And we were able to, it was interesting because we got together with a gentleman from the I apologize, can't think what they're called, accommodations, the accommodations. He had hyperhidrosis. We got together with the folks from the employee resource group called Ability, which focuses on those with disabilities. And the woman that we were working with had hyperhidrosis. And then we went out to iCount, which is kind of our government oversight that, you can register to show what disabilities you have. And the gentleman from iCount had family members with hyperhidrosis. So it was really, I think, serendipitous for what we were trying to do. And we had a great success for it. And it really did help drive workplace accommodations and understanding. Not putting somebody near a heater, allowing maybe to have a fan or to be sitting closer to a fan away from a window. So really being able to be more aware for our leadership to maybe go for more of the backhanded high five, versus having to shake someone's hand. And so really just putting out more awareness, I think, is critical. And again, for me to be able to share with my sister, who literally works in a hospital, a name for what we had, and to be able to then share that down to other family members and to look at the treatment options and to be able to help them, get some relief, right? That it wasn't something that was specific to just our little community and our tribe, but it was actually global, right? People are suffering from it worldwide. Yeah, it's close to 5%, I believe, of the world's population.
Yeah, that's what Lisa told me when I spoke with her last week. I'm blown away by that because I too have heard very little about this disease. So to hear that 5% of the population is suffering with it is a remarkable statistic.
But you have shook the hand of somebody who's sweaty.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you have seen that person with the sweat lines down to the, to the belt line, or the person who has cranial, right? Where they're constantly dabbing at their face. It's, I think compassion towards it and understanding is huge. I think it really makes a difference.
Absolutely. Raili and Brandon, I want to give you a chance to comment here either about the research or about the work that your mom and mother-in-law accomplished with AT&T. And I'm sort of wondering, with that work, is that a roadmap that could be applied to other companies? Is that something, I know, Raili, you've mentioned how this has affected your professional career. Is this something that you see happening with your company in the future?
I would hope so, but unfortunately I'm in a very customer service oriented industry. And so you don't really see a lot of willingness to change and accept some of the accommodations that AT&T is able to make, because you have to be able to get knowledge out to a broader audience before people are willing to accept that change in a customer service position. So I don't foresee any changes in my industry going forward, but Who knows? Maybe eventually.
I ask her a question, right? Can you say to them, I have hyperhidrosis? It basically means that I've got a condition that creates sweaty hands and sweaty feet. And so I'm uncomfortable shaking hands just because I don't want to make you uncomfortable, right? Is that something where you can kind of communicate that with them?
On a regular daily basis.
Yeah.
That's kind of the issue, is there's
Right.
too many people that come in contact that,
Yeah.
I mean,
Fair.
COVID has almost been a blessing in the elbow high fives or the wave high five, or,
The elbows, yeah.
that I don't have to come up with these excuses at this current juncture. So, I mean, that's, hidden blessing that is unfortunate right now.
Yeah.
I met a woman who every time she had to be in a situation where she had to shake hands, she ran to the bathroom and then came back out and said she just washed her hands.
Oh, wow.
And so that was her go-to every single time. She said, I would watch, and about the time I knew we were going, she said I would bolt to the bathroom.
Wow.
So that I could have that excuse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Raili, the comments you've made about your industry just really highlight to me the value and importance of research and data. And I feel like the stronger the research and the more there is, and to even coincide with what you were saying, Dawn, about awareness, the bigger the argument you have for changing the landscape, right? So all the more reason, not just for your children, but for all future generations and for into adulthood, all the more reason for more research to be done so that you have that sort of in your back pocket and can say, actually, 5% of the population has this. Here's how we know how to deal with it based on the research. Mm-hmm. Is there anything any of you would just like to share, something we haven't talked about yet? Is there a message that you would like doctors, providers, researchers to know?
It's interesting because Dan and I, as business owners, how do you address this and how do you honor people's medical needs?
Mm-hmm.
But, it's that's an interesting, because that isn't something that's talked about in the workplace. And, out of all the things we've talked about and all the weird hiccups that we have, that's not one of them. And it would be nice to hear that, if one of our guys is having issues holding piping, that we can help them from a medical standpoint. Like, okay, what can we do? Because we do anything we can to help any of our other employees having a medical problem. So, and it's just not something that's talked about. And as we're both two people that do the best we can in our HR positions, and it's not something that's brought up out of all of the issues. And I think that might be something that needs to be, because Dan, he goes through 1 to 3 shirts a day.
Wow. I
mean, if we're having a weird day at work, Dan has to grab another shirt out of the box. Luckily, it's work shirts. Mm-hmm. So we have a dozen, hundreds of them. But sometimes he has to replace his shirt in the middle of the day. And I have a cousin who's, 110 pounds soaking wet, who always has an extra shirt in her purse. Mm-hmm. Because not only does she sweat to her belt line, but she's stinky.
Yeah.
And it's awful to watch. And, and I don't have it, but my mom, she can hold her hand here and it drips. Mm. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I could see where us being our worst critics, that would be a really uncomfortable thing to live with. And
presenting in front of leadership is really interesting, because you go to point and then the sweat flies. You have to be really careful as you're, and using your hands, right? We're Italian, and so it's part of your culture, right, is to talk with my hands. And to be able to get up, and I've had many opportunities to present, and I have to be very cautious and conscientious of where my hands are so that I don't fling sweat in the middle of a presentation towards somebody, because I'm showing something, right? So
Yeah.
that's really something you have to be aware of. And I think in companies
One
and
thing-
culture and society, having a better understanding of what is really going on, I think will go a long ways towards helping. Again, there's everybody knows what asthma is, everybody knows what diabetes is, everybody knows what peanut allergies are, right? There's all these conditions out there, of which there's larger numbers in many of these categories in hyperhidrosis than there is in some of the other ones. So what are we doing that doesn't have it out there? Well, there's a stigma. There's not a stigma to being allergic to peanuts. You can't help that, right? There's not a stigma to certain things, but there's definitely a stigma to sweating. It's not something you
one
want to
thing
do.
that I've realized with people that have hyperhidrosis, one observation of mine growing up around it is people with hyperhidrosis tend to have more sensitive skin. Where you could literally put anything on my skin and I am just fine. But you can't use a clinical deodorant on people with hyperhidrosis. You'll make them break out. You'll hurt them. Dan, he's got sensitive skin, and so I'm constantly looking for, I'll put chemical peels on my face once a week. I don't care. But with him, I have to think of what lotion has 0 fragrance, 0 chemicals, 0, 0, 0, 0. And even the deodorant, maybe a clinical deodorant would help him not smell.
No, I wouldn't do it. From personal experience, I wouldn't do it.
It would actually cause sores and a reaction. That's one thing that I have noticed with the hyperhidrosis is, the things that are available are not kind. They're not kind. They're not good to the skin.
What's it like going to see the doctor and talking to the doctor about your disease as an adult, but then also talking to them about your children? I mean, how does that happen? How does that work?
We haven't really addressed that with the doctor, honestly.
Okay.
Knowing what the research out there and the available treatments, it's not really something I'm comfortable subjecting the kids to. So until there's more viable, less invasive, because let's be honest, putting your hands to be electrocuted is invasive.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just with the treatment options available, it's not something I'm willing to subject the kids to. So it's not really something we've discussed with the doctor. It's just, we just are very, very careful. Like we said, in the clinical stuff does not work at all. So we just have to be very careful. Hypoallergenic, no scents, no nothing, including like everything from the soaps that we use to the laundry detergents to the dryer sheets we can use. Even down to the shampoos and body washes and whatnot. We just have to be careful with absolutely everything, because some stuff will cause horrific hives and rashes, and some stuff will cause dry skin to the point of splitting and bleeding, even through all of the sweating. And so it's just, and the poor kids, we've been through some really horrible things as far as skin allergies with them, trying trial and error to the point where some of this baby sensitive stuff is horrible, horrible reactions on their skin.
And we don't put lotion on their feet or hands.
No.
And they'll tell you that.
So the gap in the research is really something that you have to experience every day and live with every day.
Hey, Harley, what do you think when we put lotion on your hands and feet?
I don't like it.
I know you don't.
Feel about your sweaty hands and feet. You want to talk about it?
How's it make you feel?
Very bad when it happens.
Yeah.
Does it happen a lot? Yeah.
Does it make it hard to wear shoes?
It makes, when they get put on my hand, the water just slips out.
Yeah, it does.
That's what I don't like.
Yeah. Say no to sweaty hands.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, all I can say is that I am so grateful to all of you for sitting down and talking with me today. By doing that, we are raising awareness, and we hope to get the word out even further for the International Hyperhidrosis Society so that we can start addressing those research gaps. And hopefully the PEDRA network will pick up the torch and start some research. So thank you all so much for sharing your stories with us today. Thank you to Dawn, Raili, Brandon, Scarlett, Harley, Dan, Stephanie, and Zeke for sharing their story with us today. It was an honor and a privilege to interview this family and talk to them about hyperhidrosis. To learn more about the International Hyperhidrosis Society, please go to sweathelp.org for more information about how you can get involved, what kind of research is currently happening, where the gaps are, and how you can become more familiar with this condition. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for more community spotlights. And you can also check out our podcasts on iTunes or Google Play. We're also on Spotify. And if you have any questions about PEDRA, hop on over to www.pedraresearch.org. Thanks. We'll see you next time.